Good afternoon, we're here again. This time we're looking at the book of Daniel, looking at the seriousness of the implications of the prophecies in Daniel. Daniel was a very important prophet, and a lot of effort has been made to try and diminish his importance and the origin of the book in relation to casting aspersions on its prophetic origins and trying to link it to the Canaanites. That's because Daniel and Ezekiel are critical in understanding the last days and the last sequence of the prophecies of Daniel. It is very important. Now, Daniel and the people, the hostages that were taken by Nebuchadnezzar, after Nebuchadnezzar won the Battle of Carchemish in 605, he established a siege, a preliminary siege against Jerusalem, and he was given some tribute and hostages by the Jews from the royal families of the Jews, which included Daniel and also Hananiah, Mishael and Azariah, or Azariah, as some might pronounce it. But these people were royal hostages, and they were faithful to the law and the testimony and to the food laws when they went into captivity. And that was in 605. They were the first of the captives, and they were indeed hostages. Now, Daniel quickly won favour and then served as a regent over the whole province of Babylon, and was chief of the governors and over all of the wise men, as we see develop. Now, the book of Daniel runs in 12 chapters, and the chapters deal with the captivity and the rise of Nebuchadnezzar, that is, the captivity under the rise of Nebuchadnezzar, in chapter 1. Chapter 2 provides the outline of the empires that cover the sequence from the Babylonian system established firstly under Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonians. The second system was the Medo-Persians. The third, the Greeks and their divisions over Asia, Greece and Egypt. 4, the Roman Empire and its two divisions. 5, the Holy Roman Empire. And 6, the Empire of the Beast of the 10 Toes, which is now coming upon us. We are indeed within that system. 7 is the Messianic restoration under Messiah as the stone uncut by human hands of chapter 2, 44 to 45. Now, the third chapter deals with the erection of an establishment of idols and false worship that was to come from this system. This was to be established so that the chosen of God would be tested and proven under the false systems, and the capacity of God to deliver his chosen was demonstrated through the fiery furnace and also with the lion's den. He showed that his host was sent to accompany them in the trials they would follow. Now, in chapter 4, we see the text dealing with the establishment of the elect in the eyes of the rulers in the system, and that they were forced to acknowledge the power of the one true God. In this chapter we see the prophecy of the 7 times in the cutting down of the tree and the binding of the stump. And the 7 times is of a dual prophecy of 7 years. Of Nebuchadnezzar, or 7 times, which is 2,520 years. You see that as we go through the texts dealing with each chapter. At the end of the period of the empire, reason is restored to mankind, and the millennial system of the 7,000-year period is established and the temple rebuilt. You see that covered in the paper The Golden Jubilee, number 300, and after that we'll reign forevermore. And compare the City of God also, number 180. Chapter 5 skips on to deal with Belshazzar, the son of the last Neo-Babylonian ruler, who was viceroy in his absence on extended religious devotions. The state banquet used the utensils taken to Babylon in chapter 1 verse 2 from the temple of God. See also Ezra 1 verses 7 to 11. And involved God's punishment in the sacrileges conducted. This was to serve as warning to the religious system set up from Babylon. And which passed on into the various successive empires. By these aspects they were to be judged and condemned, and their empire taken from them, and given to those more worthy. In the end, none accounted worthy, and Messiah is sent to take over the world religions, and establish them under the laws of God, as we see at the end. Now, this prophecy is one of the reasons the world religious systems rejects Daniel, makes no real attempt to unravel its prophecies, because they stand condemned by it. You will not get any sense out of any world religious system that falls within the ambit of these prophecies. Now, chapter 6 then deals with the first change to this Babylonian system from the head of gold. This goes then to the torso of silver with silver arms, and this refers to the Medes and the Persians. And they then, from that system, set up the idol, and they set up a trap for those who would not worship the systems and the religious structure established under the Medes and Persians. And the worship of the one true God was punished. And by this Daniel was then cast in a lion's den, and he was saved by the host, and the king of Babylon saw that he was saved, and then those who sought to dig a pit for him were themselves killed. That will follow on into the last days also, and we'll discuss that further. Chapter 7 starts from 554 BC in the first year of Belshazzar, son of Nabonidus, when he became viceroy. Now Daniel was given a dream concerning the 4 beasts, and the 4th with 10 horns, and it made war with the saints and sought to eradicate them. And the Son of Man was placed before the Ancient of Days. This was the end of the kingdoms, and speaks of the kingdom of the one true God under Messiah and the saints, which is the end result of the prophecy. See verses 27 to 28. This text connects the first section to the second section and with chapter 12, comparing also chapter 7 below. Chapter 8 deals with the next vision of Daniel, given in 552 BCE, which was the 24th year of God's calendar, number 156. It's placed at Ulai, verse 21, which is the river Eleos, footnote to the Oxford Annotated RSV. The prophecy shows that he was to be killed, and then the four horns that came up from him referred to the four generals, that is, Alexander was to be killed, and the four generals that succeeded him. The prophecy then deals with the desecration of the sanctuary that was overthrown from Antiochus Epiphanes, who elevated himself against God, and you see that in 1136, and was broken from 2 Maccabees 9:5 and on to the destruction of the temple in 70 CE. As foretold in chapter 9, and the doing away with the daily sacrifice until the coming of the Messiah. Now this relates to the 2,300 evenings and mornings or years as foretold in verse 14. See chapter 8 below. The prophecy ends showing that the final monarch shall be given power over the world and the saints, and he shall be there and move against the Messiah when he comes to establish the millennial kingdom of God. You are now going into those sequences, and we have been moving into them for the last considerable period. Now he and the world systems, both government, that is, both governmental and religious, are then overthrown. Chapter 9 is listed in the first year of Darius the Mede, sons of Ahasuerus, which means Xerxes. Some scholars assume this was a mythical king. In fact, they would prefer to have it to be a mythical king, rather than look at the history and simply accept the fact that the timing is back to the first year that the Medes under Darius took over Chaldea with and for Cyrus the Persian, who was his nephew. And the vision was thus arranged in this order to explain the sequence of the prophecy rather than the order in which they were given. And the chapter deals with the reasons and explains why Judah and Israel were dispersed in all directions. It was because they would not keep the commandments of God and listen to the servants of God, the prophets. And that remained so then until the final sequence of the last wars of the end. They would not listen to the churches of God under Christ, and they killed the apostles and the disciples of Christ on through for 2,000 years. We've explained that elsewhere, and we'll continue to bring and develop that out now in the explanations under Daniel. Now God then gives understanding of the 70 weeks of years for the rebuilding of the temple and its destruction in 70 CE. This is a most important prophecy, and Daniel, because of this, had a forgery placed within chapter 9 dealing with the reign and the reconstruction of the temple, in an attempt to try and create the illusion, contrary to Ezra chapter 4, that somehow the temple was constructed in the reign of Darius Daspes, that is Darius the First, so that they could tie it in to a fictitious sequence, trying to couple it with the Messiah, which it does not do. Now this 70 weeks of years is critical to the sign of Jonah covered in paper number 013 and also 013b on the completion of the sign of Jonah. That's an important text related to this, and Daniel and the charts in the sequence tie Ezekiel with Daniel and the final timings. And that was the reason these prophecies were opposed by these pseudo-Christian churches that have become basically the proponents of Christ and teach nothing of the biblical structure and say, indeed, that the law of God is done away. All of that is why they will be destroyed at the end. They're part of the Babylonian system. They're not Christian. And we will deal with that later. Now, chapter 10 then jumps to the 3rd year of Cyrus the Persian. In this year, Daniel was given a complete vision of the last days, and from then the end of the age and the coming of the Messiah, as we see in chapter 12, verse 13. This chapter is the prologue to the vision. In this chapter we see that the Elohim, that was the prince of Persia, stood against this being, and Michael, who was left to deal with him. This being returned, and he and Michael dealt with him further. Chapter 11 then goes on to deal with the sequence of the prophecy up until the last days, covered in 11:40 to 45. The sequence in chapter 10 and 11 refer to the kings of the north and the south, which are the conflicts that followed the period of the fall of the temple, dealt with in chapter 9. Chapter 12 then goes on to deal with Michael, that has charge over the chosen people. This aspect of the prophecy deals with the final conflict with the Antichrist system and the virtual destruction of the nations. This text deals with the deliverance of the saints under the Messiah and the resurrections. Revelation chapter 20 explains this text in its divisions, and you see that in chapter 12 below. This text was able to be shut up until the last days and explained under Jeremiah 4:15 to 27. And we'll go on now and look at the epilogue. This is F02713. This deals with the text as a summary of the book and gives some key points. It also has a series of charts, and the charts deal with the texts. Now, this first chart deals with the outline of the empires in Daniel 2 and Revelation 17, which are two representations of the same prophetic concept given to two different prophets. This chart, the first one, deals with the beast of Revelation 17 and Daniel chapter 2 in the sequence of the idols through the metals of the idol, through the head of gold, torso and arms of silver, the body of bronze, the legs of iron. And it explains which empires they are. The gold is the Babylonians, the silver the Medo-Persians, bronze the Greeks and their divisions over Asia, Greece and Egypt. The legs of iron were the Roman Empire and its two divisions. The feet of iron and miry clay was the Holy Roman Empire, which went from 590 to 1850. The 10 toes of iron and miry clay is the last empire of the beast of the 10 toes. And that's been developing over the 20th century through until 1997, when it began to take control of the world democracies, world governments, and establish this single system, which is anti-democratic. Now, the Christ, as a seventh empire, the stone uncut by human hands, will arrive in the immediate future and smash this beast on the 10 toes and collapse the beast and take over the rulership of the entire world. The second chart is the beast of Revelation 13, from Daniel chapter 7, also dealing with the first beast, the Roman Empire and the Holy Roman Empire, the second beast, the empire formed from the Russian system, the third beast is the Asian systems and extends from the Middle East to the Far East, and the fourth beast, the empire of the system of the Antichrist, throughout until the end of time and the arrival of the Messiah. We are about to experience that final system. The next chart deals with the prophecy of Pharaoh's broken arms in Ezekiel. Now, the prophecy of Pharaoh's broken arms, from Ezekiel 32, 1 to 8, was a very important interrelated prophecy with Daniel. And it's most important that we understand that it has to be linked with Daniel, and that the prophecies in general are all interrelated. Now, it takes from 605 BCE, it's beginning of the time of the nations, Daniel 4:32, detailing from the battle of Carchemish and the ascension of Nebuchadnezzar, and then goes through to the occupation of Egypt by Cambyses from chapter 29 to 30 following, and Cambyses' invasion was in 525 BCE. It then jumps 2,520 years, or 7 times, to 1916, within the 1418 First World War, and the wars of the end begin. This will last 80 years through to 1996-97, and that was the end of the time of the Gentiles, or the time of the nations. From 1997 to 2027, over that last 30 years, is the sequence of the last empire of the beast, which will be ended in 2027. Now, in the last period, between the years 2024 and 2027, we will see the arrival of the two witnesses mentioned in Revelation chapter 11 and in Malachi chapter 4 verse 5. And they will be on the Temple Mount prophesying to the world and inflicting the nexus of the law on them under the laws of God for 42 months of the beast power. They'll be there for 1,260 days. And at the end of that 1,260 days, they will be killed. They will be resurrected, and then Christ will arrive. The following 30 days, following Christ's arrival, will be the 43rd month, the 1 hour of the beast mentioned in Revelation. The 40 days, the 40 vials of the wrath of God and the subjugation of the nations follow. And after that, the 5 days completes the 1,335 days and the subjugation of the planet. And that last 5 days is for the reorganization for the final harvest and the preparation for the millennial system, which will commence in 2028. Blessed is he who waits and comes to the 1,335 days. Daniel 12, chapter, verse 12. Daniel chapter 12, verse 12. This text is a very important prophecy. It was sealed until the time of the end. It is now explained so that all of us can understand what it is that we are faced with, what is to happen in the last days, and how we are to deal with it. There are many, many problems that we see arising, and there is a willful reluctance of the people to deal with this structure of the book of Daniel and its interrelationship with Ezra and Nehemiah and Ezekiel and the Revelation and the other prophecies in the Bible. The Bible is of no private interpretation. All of its prophecies are interrelated. And we're about to see the end very soon. And we're about to go through this 4 years, from 2024 to 2027, as the prophecy dealing with the wars of the end, the wars of the fifth trumpet and the wars of the sixth trumpet, and then going then into the third woe and the return of the Messiah, and we will see then the final wars and the vials of the wrath of God in accordance with prophecy, tying Daniel in finally to Revelation and the end days. This is a most important prophecy. It's important that everyone understands it and studies it and realizes that all of our future is dependent upon the law and the testimony and the keeping of the commandments of God and the calendar of God, of the temple system, which flows from the law. There is no religious system other than this system that is keeping the temple calendar and the laws of God on the planet at the moment. And it's important that you understand that only doing that will keep you alive.